Futures trading involves risk and is not suitable for all investors. Content provided in this segment is meant for educational purposes and is not a solicitation to buy or sell commodities.
Hello, welcome to another edition of the Grain Feed, brought to you by EverAg. This is your weekly news feed for all things grain and all things feed. Each week we bring you updates on the markets with unique perspectives from an amazing team of analysts with the intention of helping dairy and livestock producers manage their risk. I'm your host, Jim Matthews, reporting from the Chicago home office today, and we have a unique recording today. It's just going to be yours truly here on the Grain Feed this week. We have a lot of folks bouncing around the US of A visiting conferences such as Dairy West out in Boise, Idaho. We had folks doing presentations and farm visits across South Dakota, California, Wisconsin, Iowa, you name it. We've been there. It's been a busy stretch, especially as we try and wrap up harvest here in the U.S. I was lucky enough to drive up I-29 a bit this week and see those lovely combines out there kicking up dust on what was a beautiful stretch of 50 degrees and sunshine across eastern South Dakota. And a huge thanks to everyone that let us visit and spend some time with them this week. It was lovely and the weather was lovely, and you can't ask for more as you start to approach mid-November here. 50 degrees and sunshine, it's not too shabby. But because of this unique one here this week, I'm going to be handling this solo. I'm going to try and run through a few topics that I think have been pressing over the last week or so. But first, Michael, if you would please kindly timestamp the broadcast. It is Thursday morning. It's about 11:30 Chicago time on Thursday. The markets are open and the markets are bright red on the screens. It's been a volatile stretch here, to say the least, especially for the soy complex, holy smoke beans, and holy smoke meal. It's been a huge back and forth here as the markets try to digest exactly what is happening between the United States and the Chinese government in terms of what we've worked out or may have not worked out from a trade standpoint. But today we do have December corn down 6 cents at the moment. It is at $4.29 and a quarter. So back under 4.30 here at the moment for corn, seemingly following the wheat market, which is down a whopping near 20 cents. It's down 19 at the moment, just under 5.36 for December wheat. So really leading the charge lower for grains. On the soy complex side, we do have Novi beans, which will be really expiring here in the next week or so. But Novi beans down 28.5 at 10.91 and a quarter. And then Jan beans will be the lead. They're down 25 and a quarter at 11.09. So Jam beans still holding $11 for the moment, but quite the swing from what we saw earlier this week. And then December meal, that stubborn little byproduct, not as stubborn today. It's down $12.50 per ton, right at around, let's say, $312 a ton here at the board. Again, meal, holy smokes. One might call it the new cattle market, if you will, in terms of just how astronomically high that market was able to rally in a matter of days. Now, in the grand scheme of things, 325 to 330 soybean meal, it's nowhere what we've seen over the last 2, 3, or 4 years when we have achieved $500 bean meal at this time of year. But nevertheless, when we had lows of 280 and or slightly lower here over the last month or so, 325 is a pretty steep number, I'd say. Relatively speaking. So to see that down of almost 4% just today alone, it is quite the pullback. So we're trying to digest some of this news, see what's out there for us. I think as we push forward into what will soon be mid-November, we do have a WASDE report coming. We will have a WASDE report next Friday, the 14th. We had our October WASDE report canceled, as you may recall, due to the government shutdown. Our dear friends at the USDA believe they have some extra money laying around to at least support NASS and some of its reports. So we'll see some like milk production, for example, coming out shortly. We'll get 2 of those reports actually in the month of November. But for the feed side of things, we will get a WASDE. It will not be on the 10th. It will be on the 14th. And I think we're going to be really curious to see what that WASDE report has to say, because the good folks at NASS have only have about 2 weeks or so to get those numbers together before that is released. I would even argue less if they just got back to work on Monday. Will they touch yields? You'd have to imagine they'd want to try, maybe using some of their own test plots across the country and whatever quick surveys they could manage to take, because we haven't had a yield number since September. So it'd be nice to at least see an update. I can say anecdotally, we continue to hear that the corn coming out of the fields over the last 2 or 3 weeks has been pretty fantastic. We talked a lot about that more, let's say, less than ideal yields coming out earlier in the harvest season. Some of those acres affected by disease due to excess moisture, let's say southern rust and other issues that might have lowered initial yields. Then folks, I think, rolled over their soybeans a bit, and now again getting that last chunk of corn out of the ground as we push over the next week or two. And so far, it doesn't feel that weather is going to be slowing any folks down if they try and get to that here before Thanksgiving. I think we'll be wrapping up harvest here pretty shortly. And again, things look good. So from a yield standpoint, you could argue they should be lowering yield from what we saw in September, but how much? Maybe we'll see next Friday. I think it's also difficult to determine the export side of things, because we've been able to view inspections, but we've not been able to view actual export sales, which of course then leads to the great debate of what did we come up with China? What did we actually agree upon? And what are they actually buying from the United States? Because again, we do not see the actual export sales numbers in terms of their potential purchases. We have seen the market build a premium, at least in the soy complex, perhaps anticipating some of these purchases. The initial agreements were 12 million tons that the Chinese would buy of U.S. soybeans for this marketing year. A lot of debate whether that had to be by the end of the calendar year or whether just truly by the end of the marketing year, which is not until the end of August 2026. So it's a pretty long run. And then the 2 subsequent years of 25 million tons each in terms of commitments. Again, the timing on that and when they step in to do it, I think is going to be super interesting, because a lot of chatter has told us that they have continued to buy Brazilian vessels to at least cover them potentially through the month of December. So will they buy that full 12 million, and what will that do to the futures market? Well, we've seen Nova beans pull back below $11. We've seen Jan pull awfully close to it just today. I think that will be a key level. And then, of course, meal, I think $300 is going to be that good old psychological figure. If this liquidation does continue, will we get to 300 and able to break it, at least for those Dece and Jan delivery months? So it's going to be a really interesting WASDE to look towards next Friday. But hey, better than nothing. I think we've been flying blind, as we've said the past couple episodes, with no government data. I think part of that is the harvest progress. We have not seen that from the USDA, so we're just guessing that we're probably at 80 to 90% complete based on private estimates. Again, we're guessing that will lower some yield counts because of the conditions that we did see in the corn acreage across the United States. But I think it's just a matter of how low will those yields go and what we plan to do on the export side of things, really for both corn and beans. But also the CFTC remains closed, so we do not know the fund position in terms of managed money in each of these commodities. So we assume perhaps that they are long or have a net long in beans and meal. And so today is perhaps a bit of a liquidation of that. But I think plenty of folks could argue they were so short in meal heading into this that it might have been difficult to eliminate that position or bring it back to a net even. So this is all kind of just speculating in terms of just how aggressive the funds were in reducing shorts and or building net long. So it would be really interesting if and when the government does come back online. What will the CFTC give us in terms of those commitment of trader numbers? It should be really interesting to keep an eye on that. Lastly, I'll just cover the South Americans appear to be in pretty good shape in terms of weather. Feels like they've made some great planting progress. Both Brazil and their key acreage areas, along with Argentina, have both made some wonderful progress here from planting. It feels like the mild La Nina that they have experienced has not slowed anyone down and has not really caused major panic in terms of any weather issues going through the late planting or early development stages for those crops. So as long as things look okay down there, it's going to be hard to find some real support in the markets. And of course, back to the Chinese discussion, as long as they can buy or secure some decent quality down there for cheap pricing, I think they're going to continue to do it. So a lot to take in there. I'm sure you are all missing Jake and my other fantastic colleagues because no one wants to hear me speak for 10 minutes straight, but that's what you are stuck with for this week. So a huge thanks for listening and for tuning in this week. We really appreciate everybody's support for this production. We want to thank Michael and the Everag Insights crew for their work. We want to thank you, the viewers, for watching the Grain Feed. Contact information is on the screen. We greatly appreciate your feedback. That is all for today. We'll see you next time on the Grain Feed.